the purpose of the conference is to save the United States of America. And in saving the United States of America, we'll also save Israel. The situation in our nation is dire. We have an administration which, as you know, is not doing the things that they need to in order to protect the country. Our president, in fact, is not living up to his oath of office. So we're being assailed on all sides. We're being assailed by the Iranians with their nuclear program, and the deal that the Americans have made, Americans and Europeans have made with Iran is a bogus deal. It will not stop the Iranians, of course, from building. They have a crash program to manufacture not one but many nuclear devices, and they will come back to us. They'll come back to Israel, God forbid, and come back to America unless we change course. And of course, the Putin and the Russians have been empowered by our weakness, and they are, of course, moving. The Cold War is not over. It's restarted. You know, our president said initially he was going to restart relationships with the Russians. Well, they restarted it, all right. They're restarting it with a new Cold War. And the first step, of course, took place 4 years ago with Georgia. And now, of course, it's much more serious with what's happening in the Ukraine. And since the Americans will not do, and the Europeans will not do anything about that, we're faced with a situation where we can expect in the not too distant future that the Russians will move on the Baltic states and probably other East European countries, Belarus, and who knows what. So we have never been in a more dangerous time.
There was an admiral who was the admiral for the Pacific Fleet. His name was James, Admiral James and Lyons. James Lyons.
Ace Lyons, he called it. Right.
And he outlined a program by which the president could have succeeded with Putin and with the Middle East, particularly Iran. Do you want to specify what he said? Do you want to elaborate on what he said?
I'm sorry, Joe. I was not there at the time that Lyons spoke. I was called outside to meet with others. But I have heard him speak at the last meeting, and I'll only comment is that in general, our president could have done a dozen different things immediately. Having, as it were, letting the horse out of the barn, we certainly, one of the things we could do, of course, is to immediately go back to the Czechs and the Poles and give them the missile protection that they need. That would certainly have sent a message. We certainly could go ahead and make other moves regarding our energy. As you know, America now has finally the ability to export liquefied natural gas, and we can start to do that by making a deal with the Ukraine, and that would make them to be energy not dependent on the on Russia, and I think would go a long way to stiffening them up and sending another message to the Russians. I think we could certainly move some of our carrier task force into the Mediterranean to make it clear that we are going to get in a position to do whatever we feel we have to do to protect at least other parts of the Ukraine and other East European countries. We certainly could move fighter squadrons into other bases, forward bases in NATO and Eastern Europe and Turkey in order to go ahead and be in a position, again, to protect our power. None of those things were done.
Admiral Lyons also said that he would give Israel bunker busters and fuel tankers in order for Israel to strike Iran. So I know you weren't there for it, but he was very clear that he would tell Israel today that we are here for you in America. We are here to give you bunker busters, and we are here to give you the full fuel tankers that you need to do what you have to do with Iran.
To start with, they don't have to be here for Israel. They have to be here for America. And giving Israel bunker busters and tankers and a lot more so that they can go ahead and do America's job is the very minimum that America should do. If America isn't taking care of its own interests, they better empower Israel to do so. And so while Israel, of course, is doing so on its own behalf, since their interests are identical in this case, they'd be doing it on behalf of the United States. And of course, our president and his administration is doing the opposite. They will probably be a detriment to Israel. Not only will they not give them bunker busters and tankers and other help, but they probably will feed intelligence to the Iranians regarding any attack that Israel launches. They have shortcut Israel in the recent past when Israel had made deals for forward bases in other places. I'm sure the Americans still to this day are doing everything they can to retard Israel so they can't make a successful attack on Iran.
Well, Admiral Lyons was trying to explain his strategy of how to contain Putin, and part of his strategy was to use Israel to obviously consider an invasion of Iran, the Iranian nuclear reactors, with the bunker busters and the fuel tankers, but that was an overall strategy to also bring the Mediterranean into the Mediterranean, two big ships, carriers, to offset Syria, because what the admiral said was we would bomb Syria, we would bomb Bashar Assad if the Russians didn't get out of the Ukraine. So using a two-pronged approach, one to let Israel bomb Iran, which is of course being helped by Russia, and bombing Syria, which is also being helped by Russia, that would make Putin come back to normal, come back to size.
I'm so sorry I missed Ace Lyons' talk. I heard him at the last conference that Impact America had, but he didn't talk about that, but that's a brilliant move. And of course Ace Lyons, not only was a full admiral, but he was head of the Pacific Fleet, and I would listen very closely what he had to say. And that certainly would be a twofer to go ahead and immediately bring pressure on Syria, and I think it would go ahead and immediately get the attention of Putin and the Russians. There are lots of ways to put pressure on. The Russian oligarchs, who in many ways are behind Putin, all have big-time luxurious lives with apartments in Manhattan and all sorts of other goodies. If there's going to be serious problems that'll destroy the values on the stock exchanges and retard trade and bring the world into a chaos, that's not going to be in their interest. And I think that would cause Putin to back down.
Well, the whole idea was to finally lead instead of following. Admiral was asking for the president to make the steps, and then General McInerney, the head of the Air Force, former head of the Air Force, said that he would have put F-22s in the air above Russia, above the Ukraine, to make sure that they got the message that they better get out of the Ukraine. But,
right.
You know, again, none of this was done.
I think he was the vice chief of staff of the Air Force.
Right.
But yes, I think McInerney is another brilliant general who understands what should be done to project American power.
Right. And then, of course, there was a segment earlier in the day on how the Muslim Brotherhood has invaded America through various and sundry front operations, including the Holy Land Foundation and various other, and CARE, which is that's the organization which is, we believe a Hamas front tied in with the Muslim Brotherhood. So we had some very interesting speakers. on that subject? You want to comment on that?
Well, America is in the worst. I've been an avid reader and follower of what's happening in our country and the world for the last since I was a kid, and I was a kid a long time ago, about 70 years ago, if I count it just from age 10. And during all that time, we have never been in a worse situation. We've always were strong internally. We had a country that was united and patriotic. We had a country that did not have, if you will, a fifth column that could affect our ability. We do have that today. Unfortunately, under the Obama administration, we are sadly being undermined, and we are being undermined to a great degree. I have high hopes that with the type of patriots we saw today at the Impact America conference, that we will be able to overcome this. But we better go ahead and start very soon. We're in deep, deep trouble, and we need Americans to rise up to go ahead and take care of their country. I also think that all Israelis, especially their government, should understand that America isn't going to take care of. Under this present administration, we have in effect an enemy of Israel. That's the effect. Whether we believe it or not, that's the truth. And if our Israeli government, led by our Prime Minister Netanyahu, doesn't recognize that Israel must act totally independently and no longer trust in the United States to be an ally. It's not an ally. And the Israeli government has to find ways to make new alliances and to strengthen itself. And it also has to do something which is probably unthinkable to the Netanyahu administration, but I think it should be considered by all Israelis, and that is to prepare for Armageddon. We are faced here with the real possibility for the first time that Israel will be attacked with nuclear weapons in the next few years. That's what Iran says they will do. That's what Iran is preparing to do. And no one's going to stop them. So Israel, in my opinion, has a chance to save itself by either taking them out or perfecting its defenses in every way, including starting to disperse big time its population, to encourage by economic means large numbers of Israelis to move into the less populated areas of the country and encourage shelters, large-size shelters like you find in a few countries. As I found back when I was a Cold Warrior in the 50s in Switzerland. Every building had a real shelter, not a shelter against fallout, but a shelter against more serious things. And to go ahead and prepare to redouble and perhaps triple the defense budget. And I know that politically that always seems difficult for populations, but it's not a matter of whether or not they think it's politically possible. It's a matter of survival for Israel. That's what I would suggest that all Israelis think about, and that those of you who understand what's going on should spend your time and energy to warn Israel, warn the Israeli population about how serious things look. America is not going to be here to take care of Israel. It can't take care of itself.
You spoke about heroes. As you know, you brought the father of Tyrell Woods. Charles Woods, the father, came in all the way from Hawaii to be at this conference today, and his son was killed in Benghazi. Four soldiers killed, besides, of course, our Ambassador Stevens. But Tyrell Woods was a great patriot of America, a great hero. Why don't you comment on what your thoughts were about the father's speech, because that was the most moving speech of the day.
Well, first of all, I don't want to misrepresent. He came on his own dime. And he didn't come from around the corner. He came from Hawaii. And he went to some great trouble to do that. I don't know, our people may have helped him to some degree, but he felt so strongly, and he said to me after he spoke that I had to come. I had to come to go ahead and try to help to rally Americans, to go ahead and not let the Benghazi thing go unpunished and unnoticed. We have a conspiracy, including, unfortunately, our Republican head of the House of Representatives, in order to not go ahead and do what's necessary to make sure that the whole story of Benghazi comes out. I urged him, I urged the father, to please continue and I offered whatever I could do to help him. Not that I can help him a great deal because he's doing fine on his own, but to publicize just exactly what's happening here. And of course we have our former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, smack in the middle of this, and one of the key culprits that has made this happen, and other Ambassador Rice, who went on a half a dozen talk shows to tell one lie after another about what happened in Benghazi. And of course the buck stops with the President of the United States. Instead of going ahead and protecting, and trying to see to it that the real story comes out, they're doing everything possible to cover it up.